So I noticed that many of you liked my video about the line 2 C6 against the London system, and that's why I decided to go ahead and make an entire mini repertoire about it. So this video will be the first one, and today we're going to take a look at the lines with d4, knight f6, bishop f4, c6, e3, queen b6, and b3. So let's start with knight f6, bishop f4. So what we are covering is the line with where black plays knight f6 and white plays bishop to f4. And here I proposed as one of the sidelines the move c6. So let's go with 1400 plus. Let's see, c6. Yeah, you can see that c6 8 is, well, I think in the opening explorer it said about 1% of the games went with c6, so that's already a nice try to get your opponent out of his comfort zone. So first of all, we're going to talk about the move e3. And most people, so here you see most people will actually play e2, e3 here. So the move is more than twice as popular as the second most common move, knight f3. And after knight f3, my recommendation is actually to go for d7, d6. But in most cases, when white plays e3, we will go for a quick queen sortie. So queen to b6. Now we are putting some pressure on the b2 pawn, and usually white will defend it with b3 or queen c1. So let's see what happens if white goes with b3. Then we go with d7, d6. So we already take control of the e5 outpost, so no more knight to e5 jumps, at least not for the time being. And we open the diagonal for our c8 bishop. So after knight to f3, so most players here, as you can see, will play knight to f3. But this does close this diagonal here, which means that we can immediately challenge the f4 bishop with knight to h5. So knight h5 here, and bishop g3 is what most people will play, but let's quickly also check out bishop to g5. So after bishop to g5, white tries to save his bishop, but it doesn't really work since we blocked all of the dark squares, you see. So here we can actually play h6, bishop to h4, and g5. When white drops his bishop back, we can take out the bishop. White will almost always recapture h takes. So this is just silly since that gives him a pretty weak pawn structure. So h takes is the move to make. And here bishop g7. We fianchetto this bishop and prepared some e5 or c5 IDs later in the game. So let's say c3. So here the dark square bishop is gone. So there is no more pressure here on this diagonal, which means that it's totally fine now to play d5. You are somewhat weakening dark squares, but white doesn't have a dark square bishop anymore, so it's pretty fine. And here, let's say if bishop to d3, then we can get our own bishop to g4 with a somewhat annoying pin. So let's try to get some more games. So here white will probably play knight to d2 to be able to move the queen later. And here we play c5 to make our bishop stronger. So the game could continue something like this. And here we play knight c6. What we might want to try to do is pin this queen here, so we have some nasty knight b4, maybe knight d4 IDs. And also, e7, e5 might come. Let's say castle, rook c8. The queen gets out with the pin. Castles. Let's continue for a bit. Rook e1, rook e8. Let's say bishop b1. Let's say the queen wants to slide over. And here we can actually move our king to f8. What we want to do is we want to prevent the check here on h7 once the queen comes to h7. So king f8. White will probably continue with his plan of queen c2. Let's see. Yeah, no games were found, but that's okay. So here we can actually play bishop takes, knight takes, and knight takes d4, right? There is still the spin, and after knight takes d4, bishop takes d4. I think we won a pawn, right? And if queen h7, then we can take out this knight, and after rook takes c3, black's position collapses. So we played, white played knight f3, we played knight h5, so now let's check out what happens if black plays bishop to g3. So the simplest is just to take out the bishop with knight takes g3. And after that we will build the fianchetto with g7, g6, and bishop g7. White then typically plays bishop to d3. It doesn't look too dangerous, but white might have a later knight g5 in mind. But also note that once white castles, knight g5 is not so dangerous anymore, since this rook here is no longer on h1. So after bishop g3 we take out the bishop. H takes g3, then g6. Let's say bishop d3, bishop g7, knight d2. One thing you want to take note of is that if white plays knight g5, then that's not so good, since you can see here there is a nasty double attack. So check, and we pick up the knight. So that's why usually white, and let's just so white will usually play knight to d2. And now since the knight is threatening to c4, we do some prophylactics, some preventive measures, and we slide the queen over to c7 ourselves. So c7 with this structure, c7 is very often a very nice square for the queen. It's well protected, and also it might support some e7, e5 IDs later, or maybe c5 IDs later. So let's say castles. Here we can already play e5. Let's say d takes e5, d takes e5. So now you notice that in the future there might be some e4 IDs. Let's say, also now we are attacking the rook. So let's say rook b1 castles. Let's say black tries something like a4, rook d8. We pile up on the d file. These pieces are placed. We're claiming that these pieces are misplaced, a bit unfortunate. And after, let's say, queen e2, knight d7, the knight can jump to c5, f6, preparing e4. You could also play a5 to prevent b4. And well, this is just a pretty good position for black. Let's see. Yeah, black is, I think, slightly better here. So after queen to b6 and b3, let's also check out what happens if after d6 white plays bishop to d3, the second most popular move. Then we can play g6, block this bishop, and after knight to f3 again we can go knight to h5. So if now bishop to g5, we can play h6, chasing the bishop away again. Similar stuff as we've seen before. And here we can also wait just one move with taking the knight, so just bishop to g7. Let's say white plays knight to d2, then knight takes g3, h6, g3. And now again I recommend c5 to try to get this bishop active. White will probably block it. Let's also quickly see what happens if we place knight c4. Then again I guess we can just go queen to c7. And after castles, similar stuff as in the other line with bishop g4. And I guess we could even play b5 at some point. Let's say castles, rook c1. Yeah. And well, once this f4 bishop is gone, you can always play d5 later to take some more control here over these light squares. So b5 looks fine also. Yeah. So knight c4 not too dangerous, you just drop back. If c3, let's say bishop g4, again you're pinning. After queen c2, knight c6. If long castle, well, let's first check out what if bishop f5 here. It's not so dangerous. I don't think white should give up this light red bishop so easily. We can just kick away the queen and then go with g4. If knight h4, then d5, and this knight isn't placed too well, I think. Same for knight h2, then we also go h5. And if knight g1, well, d5. And here you can even castle long, with the point being that these pawn pushes on the queen side might look dangerous, but they're not actually not so dangerous, since you can often just block the position with knight a5, knight c4. Well, this is definitely something you should check out for yourself. It would take me too long to go too deeply into this variation. So if after knight c6 here, long castle, then we can just play d5. Let's say white tries to play e4, that's not good for him, since we have the bishop pair, everything gets opened. There's also this queen on the open c file, so in this case, let's say for example c takes d4, knight c4, queen c7. If c takes d4, let's just see, then we can take out the bishop, and at the end this pawn here is hanging. Right, so yeah. And if instead, so that means that here white would have to take out this knight, right, since otherwise he will lose a pawn. And here we can play rook c8, king b1, b5 to raid everything, and yeah, have a perfectly good end game here with our two bishops against the two knights in a very open position. This pawn is also a bit weak, so a very good position for black.